Good evening, everyone. My name is Mimi Boblick. I'm from Parents Against Vaping. And sorry, we're joining a minute late here, but we're going to give people maybe just a few seconds to get in as they start to join, seeing the numbers tick up here. We have a really great large audience tonight, and we greatly appreciate you joining us. We hope this is helpful information. I know it will be because we have a fantastic guest speaker tonight, Dr. Taskiran. Just going to give it 30 seconds while people are joining. So why don't we start with introductions, and then while people are joining in, they can get settled. Welcome everyone. Again, I'm from Parents Against Vaping, and we are hosting this event tonight. We're really grateful you're here. Tonight, we're really thrilled to have our guest speaker, Dr. Sarper Taskiran, with us. We're going to be talking about vaping, but also just broadly substance use, predominantly nicotine, but it does really touch upon other issues, especially regarding mental health and the mental health crisis that we're facing in our society today. But just before we get into the meat of the conversation, just sharing a little bit about who we are. And I'll start with Parents Against Vaping. Parents Against Vaping was founded in around 2018. And if you can, and I will tell you, I have some fantastic colleagues behind the scenes here. One is Austin Spence, who is helping us put this together, helped us work on the slides, and now he's going to be helping us also forwarding the slides. And we have our executive director, Caroline Joyce, as well, who will be answering questions in the background. We'll talk about the Q&A function as well. And Lori Scribola, who is with us as well, who helps with our education and parent outreach as well. So our next slide, just very briefly, who Parents Against Vaping is. We were founded in 2018, and we are both a lobbying organization. We fight for changes in the laws to protect our youth, predominantly around flavored e-cigarettes, because the flavors really hook our kids. Most kids who start vaping start with flavors. So that's really what we're fighting for on the federal, state, and local levels, as well as access to these products and other things. But and then doing what we're doing tonight, which is educating. And we provide educational content and programming for parents and public health professionals, and really any adult who wants information. And so again, hopefully there'll be some great nuggets of information here tonight. And I'm joined tonight by our guest speaker, Sarper Taskiran. Dr. Taskiran works at the Child Mind Institute and has been an incredible partner of ours really since the beginning of this. We were, as we say, just parents, and we put it in quotes because I feel like we ourselves have become public health, not only advocates, but and not really experts, but certainly knowledgeable on the all the information. And a great reason for that is people like Dr. Taskiran and the Child Mind Institute, who are really on the leading edge of providing treatment and therapies and research and all sorts of things for our youth in America, not just in New York City. So Dr. Taskiran has a long list of credits to his name. Not only our partner, but he's the senior child and adolescent psychiatrist at Child Mind Institute's Psychopharmacology Center, and specializes in a range of mood disorders and other disorders. And he can talk a little bit about some which are actually very relevant to substance use, and not only for that, but also some of the treatments that are out there today, which we're learning about, and frankly, a new breakthrough, which I just learned about recently, which he'll talk about. At least it was a breakthrough for me, where I feel like there's just so, the treatments have been slow in coming for our youth. I myself have personal experience as a mother of someone who was vaping at 17. And so I bring to this a really, personal passion to this project. I'm a founding partner of Parents Against Vaping, and I do this as a volunteer because I believe so strongly in really educating people across the country in just understanding what's happening to our kids. Also, I believe that what Dr. Taskiran is going to talk about tonight will also give you some compassion for our youth because, you know, it's very easy to blame our children for these behaviors and these addictions. But the truth is that when you see all the marketing to our kids and when you understand how addictive this product really is, to me, it gave me more compassion for my own child who was really struggling with addiction. And it helped me understand, and again, people like Dr. Taskiran helped me understand why this product's so addictive and how we can help our youth. So I will let him talk a little bit about Child Mind, and then we'll get right to it. Dr. Taskiran, take it over.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mimi. And
Of
thank you
course.
for having me. I know it's late. I appreciate and praise everyone for joining this late webinar because you are doing the first thing to educate yourselves, and that will trickle down to for your benefit of your child or loved one who is vaping or who is struggling with issues around substance use. So I'm actually honored to be part of this journey that Meredith, Dorian, Dina, and Mimi has taken on over the years. They have moved mountains actually to increase awareness and to really make changes in the not only with parent awareness, but also in the legislative level. So I will be talking about decrease of numbers and some downward trends, and you guys should definitely take some credit and pat yourself back in the shoulder because of that. So I work at Child Mind Institute. It's a wonderful place to work because we really believe that we're transforming children's lives. We are an independent national nonprofit which is dedicated to improve mental health of children and to help families struggling with their child's mental health and learning disorders. If I can get the next slide. We do provide research, we do provide clinical care, and we do a lot of public outreach and public education. So our research is mainly on finding biomarkers, early biomarkers for mental health disorders, early diagnosis and treatment methods. I'm on the clinical care side. I see kids, teens, young adults day in and day out. I start at 8, I end at 8. So I see a lot of kids and young adults. I have a lot of clinical experience. And we also do partner with school systems, state and like city governments to make sure that we help with awareness and other community treatment approaches to end stigma and misinformation about mental health care. Next slide. And we have treated a lot of kids. Actually, the number there is 8,500. I think we treated more than 10,000 people from 42 nations and 48 states in Washington, D.C. We do provide free or reduced cost services to kids as well. We do a lot of attentional disorders, anxiety disorders, autism, learning disorders such as dyslexia, dyscalculia, mood disorders, and we provide medication management as well. We can go to the next slide. So I always start my talks about adolescence with this quote because I love Mark Twain, and I love his writing, I love his humor, and I love how he puts it when he says, "When I was a boy of 14, my father was so ignorant I could hardly stand to have the old man around. But when I got to be 21, I was astonished at how much the old man had learned in 7 years." This code made me think that, we are working with moving targets. Their perceptions have changed. They change over time, and they are not at a level where we see the world. They see the world in a fundamentally different way. So we need to educate ourselves in order to understand where they're coming from and in order to provide information ready to be digested by them and in order to speak in a way to be heard by them. We can get the next slide.
And I just will say that two things. One is we are recording this event. So for anyone who's missing it or has to leave early or could not join tonight, which you won't hear me, but you will be receiving a recording of this shortly in the next few days once we have a chance to synthesize. So feel free to just listen and it will be shared. And secondly, if you have questions, we will try to get to some questions at the end if we can that haven't been answered. And so if you send your question through the Q&A button, we will try and get to as many as possible, either during through our Wizard of Oz is in the back, or I will try to do them live as well at the end if we have time. Thanks. So yeah, next one. Thanks.
Sure. So first and foremost, teenagers and adolescents, and I'm stretching adolescence from like 11 to 12 all the way to 24, 25, because that is the real medical adolescence where the brain is actively changing and getting its adult shape and wiring. So, and the brain continues to evolve, continues to change up until 24, 25. So, your child doesn't become an adult at 18 magically. The changes still continue. So when I'm talking adolescents, I'm also talking about emerging adults that are between 18 and 24. They do get addicted to every substance faster and harder than adults because their brains are wired differently. There certain areas of the brain, the areas that have to do with perceiving reward, the areas that have to do with mood regulation, the areas that have to do with executive control or regulation are not developed yet, and the substances hit them with much more force. Once addicted, they have much more difficult time kicking the habit, not only during adolescence, but later in life as well. So a person who has started vaping at 15 will have a harder time kicking the habit compared to a person who started vaping at age 30. And because the teenage brain is much more plastic and primed for learning, it is also more primed for addiction. Everything that happens in adolescent's brain stick more. This is not only for substances, this is actually a great adaptive tool. Whatever memories that we make in adolescence, they stick more. I'm sure that you all remember your high school experiences or things that you did with your high school friends or early college friends, the things that you went to with much more ease compared to something that you've done at age 32. But unfortunately, if substances are in the picture, they make a mark. So we really need to make sure to work with them to make sure that they don't get in the world of substances. And a good example is, for example, youth who start drinking before age 15 are 6 times more likely to develop dependence or abuse compared to a person who starts after 21. And this is certainly true for nicotine addiction as well. Next slide. So let's look at the numbers to, understand how serious the issue that we're facing. For nicotine vaping, we're talking about 9.6% of the 8th graders have tried vaping in the last 12 months, in the last year. This number goes up to 21% in high school, in 12th grade. Alcohol is the highest. We have other illicit drugs as well. Marijuana vaping actually is right around that with nicotine, 17.6%. And in, earlier in middle school, it's 7%. There is good news that these numbers are for nicotine vaping. These numbers are trending down, much thanks to efforts like the one that we're doing right now to public awareness campaigns, to increase regulatory control over these substances, to increase awareness so that the perceived risk is higher. The numbers have been trending. They have been trending since 2019. However, we still have a lot more way to go because these substances also, especially my experience with nicotine, is like it's a whack-a-mole. You try to, stop one thing, another one pops up. lately in the last couple of years, we've been hearing more and more about nicotine pouches, these zins that people try to put in their mouth during class or other things. So that's why I included the numbers. The earlier number there is not 2021, but 2023. So there's almost double of increased prevalence for nicotine pouch use in 10th graders. And again, a double link of the prevalence for 12th graders.
Yeah, and I think this is something to really make parents aware of because it's quite a new product for us as parents and also for youth. Only in the past couple of years has it really become prevalent, but we're hearing much more about it in schools. It's really easy to conceal, contains a lot of nicotine. There's no smell or anything. You put it in between your cheek and your teeth. And, a lot of kids we think are using it for kids who can't get through the day, frankly, without nicotine hit. They use it so that they don't get caught vaping at school. They put it in their cheek and it dissolves, but it has a lot of nicotine, also not great for the brain. And so those numbers, we think are going to be trending up, unfortunately. And also marijuana vaping, I think is really important to mention because these vapes are used interchangeably now between e-cigarettes and marijuana. So, and then with the, prevalence of legalization of marijuana, we think, these numbers are also going to be trending up. And we see it in New York. It's super accessible and easy to get for our youth. So the next slide is really our first question that came in. We did take a lot of questions in advance and tried to synthesize some of them down into some general categories. This one talks about how does nicotine affect the adolescent brain development, particularly related to impulse control and mental health. So I know we talk a lot about this intersection between mental health and substance use. So if you can share a little bit about that.
Sure, sure. I can get the next slide. So the quick answer is it increases impulsivity. So it decreases cognitive functions. It reduces the attention span. So teens use nicotine in an effort to improve their attention, or so they say, but research shows that it actually reduces attention span in the long run. Chronic nicotine use also diminish cognitive functions, so kids lose cognitive functioning. They perform worse academically after they get chronically exposed, and they are more impulsive compared to peers who do not vape. The changes are reduced as age increases, meaning that if they start later, these changes are less seen. So it's why some adults, when they start vaping, they don't see similar trends. But like I said, adolescent brain is very different than an adult brain. They respond differently. For example, an adult, when they vape, they want to sit down, they want to rest. However, adolescents, they get more fidgety, they get more restless. Adolescents are more sensitive to rewarding effects of the substance. They get more out of it compared to an adult. And they don't display a lot of withdrawal symptoms. So this is an issue because they think that they're not addicted because they're not displaying withdrawal symptoms. So they continue their use, saying that, oh, I was able to stop for 3 days and didn't look for it. But then that increases their likelihood of getting addicted because they get more exposed to the substance. Teens, when they have high dose nicotine, they do not have the aversive response that usually adults have. For example, for vaping, adults report that after they vape too much, they have a achy throat, they feel bad, they feel like they're coughing more. Teens, they do have these side effects less, so they can tolerate higher doses of nicotine, which is in turn, again, making them more primed for addiction because they get exposed to higher doses.
That
And
probably
for
makes the signs a little bit harder, right?
yes, yeah, yeah.
Uh, I missed a lot of the signs early on, but there were some of these signs that you're mentioning, a dry cough and
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
inability to sleep, things like that, that I just didn't know what they were. I didn't put it connection to it. We didn't know
Yeah,
what a cigarette was.
they do start with this dry cough, which is out of nowhere, and it's almost like throat clearing, because the mucosa there in the back of the throat is dried out. So they're like trying to get saliva to lubricate that part. So it's like like that kind of throat clearing and dry cough happens. Some have dryness in the eyes, but the most, I think the earliest sign is this constant looking for something, more fidgety, more restless. When I talk to families, the first time they catch up on is they're at a family dinner and their son or daughter is excusing themselves to go to the bathroom 3 times during the dinner. Or even at home, when they're watching a movie, which is, an hour and a half, they excuse themselves and come back all the time. That movement of like unaccounted for, like they go somewhere and come back, that's the first sign to check in.
Thank you.
Um, Nicotine also changes learning. So it directly causes, so it goes to the learning centers of the brain, which is the hippocampus. And that's how we make memories. So we have an event, we experience something, and a mark is left in our hippocampus. Nicotine directly goes to receptors that change this, so it tags itself on certain fun and exciting teen memories if vaping is present during those times. For example, I have many kids in my practice who used to vape or currently still vaping and say that, oh, every time I pass by Central Park, I think about vaping because that's what I did there with my friends. In a way, it's like an Instagram story, it's tagged itself there, so it gets pulled up wherever they have experienced, or seeing some friends also can bring it up. And they engage in nicotine seeking when they have similar experiences.
And I think that can make quitting harder, right? I do think that it sometimes takes, which it did, for my daughter was going through college, and I think having those experiences all the time, every day or weekend, it's at the parties, it's everywhere where she is used to vaping, then they're going to habitually want to do it there, right? But if you change the scene and start a new job or go to a new city, different friends, might be a good opportunity to try to quit. And we can talk about, I know we'll talk about quitting
Yeah,
later.
absolutely. We can talk more about it, but also when we're trying to get them more engaged in cessation, it's something that I talk to them about and get them excited. Like reclaim your life, reclaim Central Park. It's a huge part of the city. You love that place. You played in the swings. Like it shouldn't be just a vaping place for you. Let's get this tag removed, reclaim it.
Great point. Yeah. So the next slide is a related question, but also related to addiction, which is, why some teens are immediately addicted versus others who it might take longer. Is it related to brain chemistry, or are there other factors? And I do remember a number of youth have said, oh, I took me months to get addicted. And then there were some who just said, you know what? The first hit I took, I knew it was going to be trouble. So it's a very interesting question. I'm wondering if you can address.
Yeah, we can get the next slide for that. So it has to do with, if we can get the next slide, it has to do with how your brain is reacting to the substance, nicotine, and what it does for your brain. So the our reward centers, which primarily run on dopamine, get a dopamine increase when we're exposed to a substance like nicotine. And depending on your baseline level and how much that substance increases your dopamine, that determines the feeling you get out of the substance. So if you have a low baseline dopamine, then, and if the substance produces a huge hit, huge increase, then you like the substance much more. And that is dependent on your brain chemistry. You're born with it, you inherited it from your parents. If you have a mental health condition that causes the baseline levels of dopamine to be a little bit lower, a condition like attention or inattention hyperactivity disorder, or if you're having another mental health disorder like depression or anxiety, if there is a reason for you to be lower in general, then I think that what you're going to get out of the experience could be higher. So any sort of novelty stimulates dopamine release. These substances add to it by way of their chemical structure, and some youth are more prone to getting addicted because they get more out of the substance.
Thank you.
And over time, what they do is um, they so they initially use. After they use, different parts of their brain is activated, and over time, the reward system gets dampened down. So over time, the substances cause decreased reward. They actually cause increased stress, and they cause decreased executive function, meaning that they can't really regulate themselves. They can organize themselves. So they go for an increase of the substance because they cause tolerance. They want to use more in order to get the same effect because they miss that effect, and they increase the dose over time until they realize that when they don't have it, they actually feel worse than their baseline. They are more bored, they are more stressed, and they can't really organize themselves. So they feel more beholden to the substance.
Well, that's very helpful in helping us understand the brain. And I know you've had a lot of experience with youth with ADHD. I'm wondering if you can speak to this question about the overlap between ADHD and nicotine. Do adolescents with ADHD experience different effects or risks? And I know we were talking about this last week. I did just read a study that did indicate that youth with ADHD are more likely to use substances than their counterparts that do not have ADHD. But I wonder if you can elaborate on that.
Yes, and it is true. Kids and youth with ADHD are more prone to effective substances, and they get addicted more quickly. And again, the reason is the baseline dopamine levels are usually lower, and their reward centers are not as effective. So they look for more sensation seeking. They look for more robust changes in the dopamine levels. So most kids with ADHD are not satisfied with normative, novel experiences that their peers do, and they're more likely to seek something more that could, unfortunately, be brought by certain substances, including nicotine. So they're going to be out there to get that effect more. They're more at risk to seek it out. And when they use, they're more at risk to get more out of the substance, and which will perpetuate the use. And that's why they get more addicted, and it's harder for them to kick the habit because because they are getting more substances and they get addicted more, and they have more withdrawal symptoms.
So, and that's a really great conversation to have with youth, right? If you're a parent, just to say, to let them know that they might be at a higher risk, it might make them more aware of some of the pressures they're feeling, or maybe even give them more skills to say no, because it might lead to an addiction. Can I ask you, with kids who are medicated for ADHD, does that change their baseline dopamine, or are they still at the same risk as kids who are not medicated?
So
Or
in terms of pure psychopharmacology, they are less at less risk because the treatment, especially if they are on treatments that increase their dopamine via stimulant and non-stimulant medications, they are at better they are at lower risk. There is a good study that shows that the earlier that we can start interventions, the lower the substance use risk is. So I have that question from many families asking me like, oh, we're already seeing, my son's proneness to, go do risky things. I think that, he may be at risk for substances and other risky stuff in the future. I don't want to add treatment on because it's another substance. Like, should we add it early on? Wouldn't it pave the way to future addiction? But the studies show the exact opposite. If we can actually treat it earlier on, I'm talking third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, the earlier we start, the lower the risk of substance use in the future. Sometimes when we start treatment for ADHD at late teens, then it is too late because certain systems are set.
Super interesting. Thank you. The next question is about quitting. So what impact does quitting nicotine have on mental health? And can emotional and cognitive functioning improve? I know some of the things you mentioned before, unfortunately, are irreversible changes to the brain, but what can be improved and what cannot?
So what can improve is definitely the attention span actually gets back to its baseline. And the cognitive effects are also, they do improve over time. The effects on obviously lungs, lungs are able to excrete all the hazardous toxic substances, most of them out. So there is a lot of improvement that's happening. There's a lot of healing that's happening after quitting. One thing that doesn't change is that it imprints itself. So a person who has vaped will be more at risk of relapse and vaping again. That doesn't change. So a person who quits, even like 10 years later, he will be more at a risk to start again. And also, nicotine changes how the brain reacts to other substances. That's why we call nicotine a gateway substance, that it paves the way to other problematic use, such as cocaine. People who use nicotine get more out of cocaine later in life, meaning that they will be more addicted, more likely to be addicted. And that doesn't change. That effect of the reward system stay. But a lot of the negative effects of lower emotional or cognitive functioning do improve.
Which leads me to our next question of relapse. But I do have to say, I'm sure that there are people here with younger kids. Talking about cocaine seems so extreme, but I will say I've had 3 kids go through college, and there was cocaine at every one of their schools, and these are very mainstream schools. So it is there. I think it's there to stay, unfortunately. So it's, again, another really important conversation to have with our kids. So the next question has to do with relapse. So, can you talk about quitting and people who have tried to quit multiple times and continue to relapse? Can you give some strategies for teens who are having trouble quitting, which I think is many teens. It can often take many times, right, to quit?
So first of all, like, relapse is a part of the cycle. Relapse is part of healing. And for some people, it's 1 relapse. For some people, it's 3 relapses. But especially families need to understand that relapse is a part of the cycle, and they have to support their kids through relapse as well. And this is not to normalize and say like it's okay for you to smoke, but it's okay to say them that you have relapsed, but you can go back to quitting again. The most important thing is to keep them on the mind state that is ready to quit, that is ready to consider quitting. I would say that if a teen has tried to quit vaping multiple times but continues to relapse, then they need to change strategy. If they're doing it alone, they need to not do it alone. They need to find a buddy. They need to find a partner, whether it's a roommate, whether it's the best friend, whether like families can talk to other families to, have kids get on board on a pledge to quit together, because peer influence is very, very important at their age. They can also, if they have tried quitting multiple times, they would also be a good candidate for other therapeutic modalities like psychotherapy or medication management, in which we can talk about later. But what we need to do is, first of all, everything starts with a conversation. So they need to families shouldn't be afraid to start the conversation. I know it's an awkward conversation to have with your teen. And I have had some parents ask me, should I even mention it? Like if they're not thinking about it, then I will actually insert thoughts in their minds and create this curiosity. That's not true. The curiosity is already there. They're already exposed. They're already seeing it out there. So you have to talk about it. I would say start with natural openings for the conversation, knowing that this is not going to be the one and only conversation. It can be awkward, it could be brief, it could be short. You can start with more generalizing statements, and you can ask just, questions about their knowledge of the product. Oh, I've read this article about, these, electronic cigarettes, or I went to this webinar and they talked about certain electronic cigarettes and vapes. What do you know? Do you have anyone around you who experiences vaping? And you just try to understand their experience and views. And the first time, you need to be as neutral as possible to get the unbiased version, which is the hardest thing. I know that the parents' first reaction is to, what? Tommy is vaping, you're not going to see him again. That doesn't work. They will see Tommy and you will lose the conversation there. You need to keep your calm and allow them to share so that you can actually make an impact later on. When we are talking with the teens in therapy or for motivational interviewing, what I go back to is we call it locus of control. Basically, having them think about what they're losing when they're using a substance and who they are putting in charge of their behaviors. Because one thing teens are, yes, they don't want to hear from us so much. They don't want to learn maybe so much. They don't want to get advice from us so much, but they want to be in control. Autonomy is really important for teens. So if we can show them that when they're using substances, they're actually giving control over a substance, sometimes like big tobacco, some like billionaire up there somewhere making millions of dollars out of their, own family budget. And when they are in that, family dinner, if they are trying to get a hit of vape by removing themselves 3 times, is it really their decision? Are they really in control? Or is some billionaire up there actually controlling where they sit, how much they sit, when they need to go to the bathroom and take a hit? So they are actually puppets, um, controlled by nicotine. And it's not their choice, but it's the nicotine choice of what they do. When they see that they're losing control, I see the most shift when I can get them on board with, you're losing your autonomy. A substance is deciding what you do, where you go, who you see, which classes to listen to, which classes to cut. That is not your choice. That is the nicotine deciding for you. That's a very sobering experience for them to hear that. We can get the next slide. And we talked about it a little bit about relapse, but what happens is they start using the purple one, the initial use, and then they quickly increase the amount, which gets to abuse. And then they develop tolerance to the substance, meaning that the amount that they're vaping, 1 or 2 hits every now and then, is not really cutting anymore. They need to increase their use in order to maintain the effect that they were going after. And that causes dependence. And when there is dependence, meaning that when they stop using, they kind of, with nicotine, they don't necessarily get the shakes, but the withdrawal symptom that they tell me is for vapes is this uneasy feeling that something is not right. Some tell me that they feel it in their chests. Some tell me that they get more fidgety with their hands, or they can't sit still. And they find themselves looking for the substance, looking for their vapes. And that creates the addiction, basically. And then when they try to quit, they sometimes relapse and go back to initial use, and this is a cycle. What I want to say here is this cycle trumps over natural reward systems. So the natural rewards of talking to a friend on the phone, or getting a good grade, or getting a hug from a relative, getting like $20 because they, got awarded the best student, whatever it is. That natural rewards become less satisfying because they can't compete with the substance. Unfortunately, substance take over and they win. So we need to make sure that we are making them aware of what's going on in their mind so that they can see and decide to quit.
And I will just share personally, I love this slide, and it's one of the reasons I wanted it here was because I think for parents who are struggling with youth, they're trying to encourage them to quit, however they're doing it. I think for me, when I saw this, I realized that as hard as I could encourage, my daughter was not where she needed to be on this cycle to really face and be ready to try to quit. So I had to sit on my hands and really wait for that moment and just say that I'm there for you when you're ready when you're in the right circle there, we will have a conversation and I'll support you in any way you want. And right now I have to recognize that it's in your control, but I have to wait. So I think for parents just to, I don't want to say be patient, but be patient, be compassionate, and just understand that this is a cycle. And I love the way you put it, that it's part of the process, and that very often kids will relapse and start this cycle over, and it can take several times, to really quit.
Yeah. And Mimi, another way to think about the cycle, I don't have the slides here, is there is a pre-contemplation phase where
Mhm.
they're not even thinking that the substance is hazardous. And then there's contemplation phase where they feel like, okay, I know that I need to quit, but it's not really sinking in. It's not really something they're actively thinking. And then there is active trials, and then there's success, and then there's maintenance, and then there could be another relapse.
Mhm.
So sometimes having the conversation just pushes them from pre-contemplation to contemplation, where they feel like, okay, this is actually bad, or this is bad and I need to take steps, or, yes, this is bad, I need to take steps to, okay, I'm quitting next Tuesday. So sometimes the conversation is going to advance them to the next stage. And that's a huge success. That's a huge win for you. It doesn't have to be, okay, we had the conversation, you're quitting this Monday.
Good point. Yeah. Okay, so one question that we get a lot, so there's the mental health concerns, right, which do often lead to substance use, but we can't underestimate the role that peer pressure plays in vaping and other substance use. So can you talk a little bit about peer pressure and also how teens can build resistance to these social influences?
Yes, of course. And this is a really important question. It's a good question. This is a question where we need to really go back and feel and remember our memories as they were when we were teens. Because sometimes parents understand peer pressure as like actual peers telling them to smoke or vape. This is not what peer pressure is. No, I mean, there might be situations where they're pushed or actually pressured, but the real peer pressure is just availability of the substance and people going to the bathroom or people going to the corner of the room and vaping and another child seeing it, another child recognizing that there's some, funny conversations going on there. And they say like, oh, if I'm there, I could also be a part of that conversation. So it's not necessarily people pressuring them, but it's about creating an illusion of, this is the fun place or this is something good, or, a teen gathering where vaping marijuana or nicotine becomes the center of the action. And they want to just join in, just as they want to join into other conversations. So don't let your peers pressure you. Doesn't work because no one's actually pressuring them. Um, I think having them more mindful about what is it that they're doing. This is like a one-time thing, you know, experimentation is, something normative that most people go through. But from experimentation to regular use, and from regular use to abuse, then to addiction, those are the steps that we need to really have them understand. And talk to them about, like, do they want to be um, a kid who vapes? Because, when they first start talking, they talk about, like, oh, there's like these boys and these girls, they're vaping. So almost the action defines the certain youth, and asking them if they want to be included in that group, um, implying that their behavior actually says something about them. That's sometimes helpful in certain situations. When there's not much of a judgment or stigma in their community around vaping,
Mhm.
then we talk to them about making their own decisions and being able to exist in a group without using. Like, what does it say about you or about your group if you are saying, like, oh no, thanks, and then, still be in the group? What does that mean? Are they going to kick you out? If they're going to kick you out, then do you really want to be in that group? So those are the conversations with the peer pressure. The resistance to social influence is, I think, we have to do more as adults and the regulatory systems to decrease that influence, because I think our kids are powerless if they're constantly bombarded by Instagram messaging or others TikTok messaging or social media messaging, and then seeing it in schools. That's not something that a teen can navigate through. We need to make sure that those messagings are also getting less and less over time.
Is that through reducing social media or having conversations with them? I mean, that's not an easy one since everyone's attached to their phones now. Um,
They are, but so this is more of a regulation, but
mm, mhm.
can we actually do something about smoking videos that are shared?
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, can we actually do something about the cool tricks, what they do with the vapor or smoke? So those are the things that when they're tagged, can they be reported? That's what I'm thinking as a doctor. But as for parents, what I would say is, I think it would be okay to have a conversation with their kids um, to say that just having credit because of a substance, is that really credit? Sometimes they give the credits or they accept the currency without really thinking about it. Sometimes they just need the question to be asked, like, is really smoking or vaping or making clouds, is that really something cool? Do you look at that and do you think that it's cool? Tell me about it. Even just having that second to think and reflect and be
Mhm.
say like, oh, no, maybe it's not that cool. Um, that can make a difference.
So I want to get to some strategies, evidence-based strategies, but can you, because we have about 10 minutes left, can you talk just quickly for the mental health professionals out there who are asking how they can support youth at risk for vaping, nicotine, and other substances? What do you do? What do you recommend? Or is it anything different than what you would recommend to a parent?
So for mental health professionals,
And really
the,
school,
the, the
in schools, I would say, right?
in schools,
Yeah, school mental health professionals, they're
okay, okay, school
guidance
counselors,
counselors and
sure,
really
sure, sure.
any teacher is frankly probably a school mental health professional because they have to deal with all these kids, right?
So I
So
can't
we're
say
struggling.
that the teachers should learn motivational interviewing, but I think for school counselors, motivational interviewing is a wonderful, wonderful tool. It's a tool that is, client, patient, student-centered, and it enhances motivation to quit through. It really creates a non-judgmental dialogue that looks for ambivalence and resolving ambivalence and to repeat their statements over and over again to build more incentive and momentum in the conversation. That's something that they can learn. Um, you know, any sort of contingency management using positive reinforcement, for example, achieving cessation milestones. That's something that they can do. I was talking to a teacher who had in this is a counselor in a school who had her desk drawer was a jewel graveyard. So kids came in, and when they decided to bury their jewels there, and they put a date on, and then the teacher would, the counselor would give them like 5-day, 10-day, week marks to, praise them for their efforts. There are some programs. Truth Initiative has some programs. I think prevention curriculum that they can look at. I think Smokescreen is another one. They have educational, interactive educational stuff. They can use peer support groups. I think what counselors can do is they can talk with the students, and if they have their consent to share, I think the best way to handle it is to buddy them up, like in groups of 2, 3, 4, and have them join this effort together. In my experience, I saw most success in teens who try to quit together.
Yeah, fantastic. That's a great idea, which leads us to our next very important topic, which I want to spend time on, which is what evidence-based practices have been proven effective. This is one thing that we're really struggling with. And so I'd love if you could spend time on these for just a couple of minutes before we do our final slides. But this is such an important topic.
Sure, sure. If I can get the next slide. So first and most important, the treatment starts at home. The conversations that we talked about, the messaging around smoking and vaping and nicotine, and what kind of modeling they get. If they have, obviously, if their parents are smoking or vaping, stop that. If they have an uncle, aunt, whoever it is, like younger cousin who vapes around, don't just, tolerate and say it's okay. You need to say something if a relative is vaping near your kids. Because that modeling, no matter of years of therapy, cannot really outdo that kind of modeling that they receive over the years. Psychoeducation is what we talked about, basically teaching them the truth behind the brain changes that happens with nicotine use. That they can have psychoeducation at schools, other centers in the community. They can have them through their parents. If they are addicted, if they are struggling, psychotherapy is the place that we start. And for psychotherapy, we have cognitive behavioral therapy, motivational interviewing, and contingency management that we talked a little bit about. There are some school and community-based programs. There are some really cool digital mobile health tools. Um, they are there are text message programs. This is Quitting is one of them. There are also some apps. I think like Here I Quit was one, or Quits. The ones that track
Yeah.
for the time of quitting are the ones that are most helpful. So the teens that they look at their app and they're having the urge, they're thinking about quitting, and they look at their app and it says like it has been 37 hours and 22 minutes since you had your last hit. That is a very good incentive for them to keep that streak, because they love their streaks on Snapchat and other things as well. So we want them to keep their streaks. And lastly, if nothing else works, pharmacological treatments are, we use nicotine replacement therapy for high dose users of nicotine, and the non-nicotine medications, which are bupropion and varenicline. Bupropion is not FDA approved for youth, But varenicline, if I can get the next slide, this is fresh off the press, actually. This was published not less than a month ago in JAMA. And it is the first randomized clinical trial for varenicline for youth for nicotine vaping cessation. And it was a 12-week randomized clinical trial. It was done in youth between ages 16 and 25. And they had actually good, and they compared it to placebo, meaning that they're giving, for 12 weeks, they're giving sugar pill to one group and the real medication to another group. And the abstinence rates were 51% for actual drug group, varenicline group, and 14% for the placebo group. So we see a
That's really
huge
exciting.
difference.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like we talked about, there's relapse, but more than half was able to remain abstinent after 6 months. Um,
I think this
with
is for me one of the most exciting because it's new, it's been tested. So for this age group, I'm really encouraged that there's something out there that we can share
Yeah.
with parents in terms of cessation tools. I know we don't have a lot of time. We may go 2 or 3 minutes over, but I did want to share a little bit what Sarper was just talking about, Dr. Taskiran. If you can go to the next slide, just some programs that are, that are evidence-based, that have been proven helpful. One is the Truth Initiative, which Dr. Taskiran was just mentioning. It used to be called This Is Quitting. It's now called the X program. And it is AI driven. It gives you some really good support. And also there's a parent program that used to be, I don't know now with the X program, but there used to be one for youth and for parents. And it really does give you encouraging advice. The next slide also goes through some resources for schools, which we can share. It's also on our website. I think it's super important that schools understand the importance of restorative practices of discipline as opposed to expulsion and suspension, which have been proven very detrimental, not only for youth education, but substance use as well. So that is very helpful if people want to learn more to go on our website. And then finally, do you want to give a brief wrap up on all of this? And then we can just quickly share our resources and QR code and all of that with everyone.
Sure. What I want to end with is saying that, reiterating that adolescents have a fundamentally different brain compared to adults. If you think their minds as cars, their accelerator is much, much more efficient than ours, but their brakes are not as good. So they go 0 to 60 in 2 seconds, and they can't really brake as much. And with every decision that they make, they are a little more impulsive, but most importantly, they have this propensity to seek sensational, novel experiences. The substances, if they're presented that way, they will have a natural inclination to go for the substance. They will experiment. It's not the end of the world. We need to be non-judgmental. We need to listen to them, and we need to make sure that they find a way to quit. They learn what the substance is doing to them. They learn that the substance is taking over some of their decision making. They should learn that it is actually going to decrease their attention span, decrease their cognition, and those functions will be restored when they quit. And support is around, either in the school, in community, at home, or medical support if they need it.
Fantastic. And I do want to share, we are done with the slides, but I also want to share that if you have a child struggling and you want to reach out to Childmind, here's a QR code you can scan. You can also go on their website. They have great information there if you want to reach out as well. So please feel free to either scan that, and we can share that in the chat as well. I'm not sure, can we share that in the chat? But if not, you can scan it here. And then I want to give you 10 seconds to do that. And then we also want to share our QR code if you want to reach out to us, either with questions or also to fill out a survey. We would love you to fill out. We'll also be emailing the survey to you. We would love feedback, anything missing, anything more you want to hear about. We hope we got to some of the questions online, but if you want to join us, either to be an educator or an advocate, please join us at Parents Against Vaping. You can scan that QR code or go on our website as well. We are super grateful for our sponsor, which was the Arizonians Concerned About Smoking. Thank you so much for your support as well. And we can just go back to the 2 QR codes in case people missed it. But we have the Child Mind one and then the PAVE one as well. So we are so grateful, Dr. Taskiran, for joining us tonight. This has been really informative. I always learn something when I hear you. There's always something new to share, and we're just grateful that you were able to share all your resources with us. And if anyone has questions, reach out to us, but otherwise, we look forward to another upcoming webinar with you all. So thanks again, Doctor.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
So grateful. Appreciate it.